Well, Danny Clark is he's essentially he's a young dreamer, really. He's a man with a very strong attachment to two things, one of them being Joanna and the other being Jaguar motor cars. Yeah, the character of the mum and dad are very important, and for a lot of people they're actually their favourite characters in the film. They are very eccentric, very loving, and they they give off a sense that they don't really they belong somewhere else. His father is quite, he's kind of one of those guys, and I mean, you see this in the film, where he talks about, don't go dreaming, don't go getting ahead of yourself and stuff like that. But they're very, very eccentric. I mean, the way they talk to each other and their Tai Chi routines, and they're great characters. I don't actually remember too much of what we did in rehearsals. I remember I don't know. I remember a lot of the talking and stuff. But in terms of like getting a feel with those guys, it was pretty much, I don't know, that kind of stuff just happens. I mean, Marshall was very, very approachable, very easygoing, and I remember Maggie as being like just very warm, very easy to do those scenes with, and Marshall and I would crap on a lot. We talked about, what was it? We used to talk about Islam a lot, and I would pester him before he would go for takes, because he'd go into this real kind of, concentration. I later learned it was, and I'd be pestering him right up until we started, and he'd be like, okay. Well, I think that I'd like to use stronger language, but I think just the essence is that one is being stuffed over by someone. I mean, Danny is he's very out of his depth in that particular situation, and the whole thing with Gordon Farkas is really just about being beguiled enough, and and stuff, and then I guess the feeling of revenge and stuff which comes later on. But I don't know what what if anything is the key to successfully bring that across. I mean, it's all pretty much there. You know what I mean? If you don't get in the way of it too much, it's going to work, because David Parker did a great job of making that stuff all very, very clear. There's some fantastic stuff with Farkas, and one of the scenes that I like the most, and in fact it's the line I like the most in The Big Steal, is when he gets pulled over and he gets out of the car and he's in he's in drag. Now I think that was his idea, but he gets pulled over and he gets breathalyzed, and there's this whole inference there that it can all be worked out because he knows the desk sergeant or whatever it is, and then he says. He turns to the other cop and says, Jesus, look at the tits on that bloke, which is, I love that line. It's my favourite line in the film. People love "Don't you touch her breasts." That was a difficult scene to do, because I remember just a lot of time cracking up. In fact, I think there is one shot. And the scene goes on, and then there's a wide shot, and it cuts back, and I actually notice that I start laughing in the wide there at the cut, and there's sort of a bit of a cover and a turn away. But that was a long night, and his intensity was such that it was a very, very difficult scene to do and keep a straight face. But it actually works pretty well, that scene. That scene's a pretty good scene. I mean, Claudia's a very good actor, so that stuff's very easy, and she's very easy on the eyes, and so that all that kind of stuff is comes pretty naturally. When I do remember this stuff in rehearsal a bit more between the friends, there was quite a bit more. I think there was a bit more time, and also we were all pretty gung ho to spend time together and get that kind of feeling of ease and stuff going on. And I think there were a couple of there were a couple of bets. Angelo was very keen to explore some of the I guess more pleasurable aspects of his character, and we made a bet as to I think the number of women that he could introduce himself successfully to, and we just, we hung around and we had a laugh. We got kind of comfortable with each other. Before the film actually started, when we were in the rehearsal period, we went out. We used to go out to like bars and clubs and stuff like that, and just hang about. And in the car in the backyard, when everything's gone to shit, it was a difficult scene to do. It called for weeping, and I was pretty pretty unsure as to how that would have got there. I remember that being quite difficult. I can remember doing that scene pretty well. And we just sat in the car for a long time, and then did the scene. And it's shot really, really cleverly, I think, because essentially it's just shot from the back seat, and then there's the interaction going on, and then then Danny breaks down and starts saying something, and I'll never see Joanna again. And there's a certain way the voice catches and stuff. And when we were doing it, it had very much that. It had a very kind of overwhelmed and sad feeling to it. But whenever I've seen that scene, I have always broken up laughing when I've heard that, because of the way that sort of all goes along. And I like that it's like that. To me, it's actually a very, very funny scene, because he's so particularly overwhelmed by it all, and just the way it starts breaking through that point. It's always made me laugh. The room and the living space that Danny was in is pretty much all production design, art design type of questions. But I do remember being allowed to sort of juggle things around and put. I think there were a couple of. There may have been a couple of things there that, for whatever reason, jarred and stuff like that. But no, essentially that's all there to to reinforce and to bring home the message that this is something that's very, very, very important. I mean, it's a really good situation in that, because immediately you kind of, hopefully, you kind of empathise with this young guy's sort of overwhelming desires for these two things, and they're set up very strongly, which is the Jaguar and Joanna. When I first got the script for The Big Steal, I didn't think that I was right for it, because I didn't think I could do A, a leading man, and B, comedy. I didn't think that either of those sort of things were going to work. And Nadia basically said, bullshit. You'll be fine. You'll be great in it. But just the way it's written. Look, David and Nadia are a very, very strong working team, but I don't think there's any doubt that the strength, in that is that. Well, the people, for a start, the people they hire, they're pretty good with who they hire, and there's a lot of room there. There's a lot of room there. I mean, as there should be. You should, hopefully feel fairly free to, play it out and kind of just be brought back when it's not working. I wasn't actually working on the day that Steve emerged with his cross-dressing outfit on, so I didn't know about that. But that's a very good example of, I guess, the the brevity or the input. I don't think that any of us were as up to speed with input and that sense of kind of having something and taking it in the way that Steve was. He was very very grown up, very experienced. But I mean, I'm sure from being, and it's a long time ago now, but I'm sure that there was a lot of that stuff too with Marshall and Maggie, that they had a lot of input about stuff, and we talked a lot about the stuff with the boys, and just got to that sort of place where, as a person and as an actor, you feel very kind of comfortable and easy. I mean, I remember it being a lot of night shoots, which were tough, but it just actually being very easy film to do, very sort of straightforward and kind of gentle. And Nadia's very, very encouraging. She really is one of those people that loves acting and loves working with actors, and comes from that background and stuff like that. And Davey's writing's really easy to play. It's very sort of, can be very straightforward, and within that you've got a lot of room to to do stuff if you want. Well, I think Nadia is a great case in point as what you want from a director. And that is, Nadia is very, very encouraging, and there's very much a feeling that what you're doing is being noticed and is being reflected back on quite accurately. And Nadia's very good at putting people in feeling states. I mean, when I watched the Big Steal, the last time I watched it, I remember thinking that in a lot of ways, in this kind of classic boy wants girl kind of story, there is this extraordinarily, like Danny Clark is a really very, very nervous kind of character, and very, unsure and stuff like that. And that had a lot to do with the way, the way that Nadia communicated the idea of Danny Clark to me, So all that kind of stuff is very much her, her input and stuff. I mean, it could have been played a number of ways, quite successfully played a number of ways, I think. But that was a way that we arrived at it. No, a film is never what you expect it to be, and I think it takes a long time to actually be able to look at a film for what it is. But I remember being quite overwhelmed by people's reaction to it. I mean, people loved it. People loved it, and I didn't. I guess that was a surprise. Oh, they howled. I mean, they really. At that time, that film was just, people loved it, and for years and years and years, I still get people, and it is 14 years or so, talk to me about that film, and they'll say, like people will come up and say, is that Daniel, our son, or Daniel the lion tamer? And so for the people that were around for that film when it came out, it was a very special film for a lot of people. Thanks. I think it's a very accessible film. I think part of the beauty of the film is it's very easy to ride along with. It's got a very good it's got a very good kind of soul to it, and it's a classic story. It's a really classic story. It doesn't attempt what it attempts to do, it does very, very well, and it's very pleasing. It's got some it's a very witty film. It's a very witty film, and it's just a very well made film. And I think at that time, and the climate of the industry, sometimes it's a funny little industry. It goes in these sort of wild ups and downs and rounds, and people just really dug it, and there've been quite a few, over the years there've been, like quite a few films which people really respond very strongly to, and I think The Big Steal was certainly, in terms of just being a really enjoyable film, it was the first one that I remember. Like, people just really, I guess there's films later like Muriel's and Strictly Ballroom that, you can kind of trace a debt of that kind of just very enjoyable films. I don't think that there's any, I don't think that there's any particular formula for being a successful actor. I think that, it helps to be competent at it, but that's not always, that doesn't always matter. I don't really know. I think that, if you're around and you're kind of good at what you do, you've got a fair chance at being successful at it. I mean, the Australian industry is kind of small, and at any one time or another, there are X number of people who are under consideration or sort of emerging up. But what you need to do in order to be one of those people, I don't know. I think you have to apply for the position and just have a look, see how it goes.